Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anindita, and together with Dr. Indah, we are both members of Indonesian Women of Cardiology, and we will be your host today. Welcome to the very first IWOC Connects, the nuts and bolts of becoming women in intervention who wins, and the challenges that follow, featuring a very special guest, Dr. Mirvat Alasnag. Assalamualaikum, good afternoon, Dr. Alasnag. We are honored to have you here.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much for this kind invitation. I'm most honored to be amongst you today.
Okay. Firstly, I would like to express our gratitude to all the audiences for joining us today. For your information, today's audience consists of mostly cardiologists in Indonesia. However, we noticed that there are also cardiology residents and also other medical doctors who have interest in cardiology and interventional cardiology, and some participants from out of Indonesia as well. It's our pleasure to welcome you all. Before we proceed any further, please allow us to read several housekeeping rules.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to you, Dr. Alasnag. Let us mention a few housekeeping rules for today's event. Number one, discussion session will be conducted after Dr. Alasnag's presentation, and all participants may direct their question in the Q&A box or live with video and audio on by first raising their hand. And Dr. Anindita and I will call out your name and we will promote you to be a panelist to direct your questions. Number three, the chat room is available for participants and panelists to mingle and chat. You are welcome to connect with everyone in the participants. And the webinar will be recorded. You can all watch the recorded session on our YouTube channel, IHA Women Cardiology. At the end of this session, there will be a photo session before the event ends. And if you are chosen to be a panelist, you will be able to turn on your video for a beautiful photo session together with Dr. Alasnag and all panelists. You may opt to use this virtual background for the photo session. The JPEG file is available to download in the chat room. Okay, back to you, Dr. Anindita.
Now, I would like to invite Diana Sarvasti to give us an opening remarks. She is the chairwoman of Indonesian Women Cardiology, which is a working group of Indonesian Heart Association. To Dr. Diana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Anindita. Hello, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings, and I hope you are healthy and happy wherever you are. I am Diana Sarvasti, chairman of the Women Cardiology Working Group of the Indonesian Heart Association for 2019 to 2022. Alhamdulillah, Hirabbil Alamin. Today we can get together at the Indonesian Women of Cardiology Connects or IWOC Connects event. That is an event organized by the Women Cardiology Working Group of the Indonesian Heart Association. This event is a casual talk show to establish communication, togetherness, and to exchange experiences that might increase knowledge with international female cardiologists from various continents globally. This time, we will meet our guests from Saudi Arabia, namely Dr. Mirvat Alasnag, Director of Cardiac Catheterization, King Fahd Armed Forces Hospital, Saudi Arabia. Welcome, Dr. Alasnag. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Happy Eid Mubarak. Taqabbalallah minna wa minkum. Syamana wa syamakum. Kula amin wa antum bi khair. Thank you for accepting our invitation and for attending the webinar meeting this afternoon. We are very happy and grateful to be able to talk with Dr. Alasnag at this meeting. And inshallah, we will be able to broaden our horizon about everything related to Dr. Alasnag as an interventionist cardiologist in Saudi Arabia. As the information, Women Cardiology is one of the working groups of the Indonesian Heart Association, which was formed in 2012. Women Cardiology is a working group consisting of Indonesian female cardiologists who are concerned about the health of cardiovascular, especially for women in Indonesia. The Women Cardiology Working Group also a forum in the form of an association of women cardiologists, or what is called the Indonesian Women of Cardiology, or IWOC, which has carried out various activities, including scientific events, health education events, or the community for the community, making various guidebooks, textbooks, or books for lay people, and social services, and also establish communication and collaboration with international women's cardiovascular health activists. The current number of female cardiologists in Indonesia in 2020 has reached approximately 453 cardiologists, women cardiologists, out of a total of 1,331 Indonesian Heart Association members. In the future, Women Cardiology Working Group hopes to realize a national registry of cardiovascular disease for women in Indonesia to act as a useful reference guide. And oh yeah, to facilitate the delivery of information and communication, Women Cardiology and IWOC also have social media on Instagram at womanheart.indonesia, inshallah Facebook, and YouTube, IHA Women Cardiology. So please follow us and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell button for the latest updates. I would also like to thank all the webinar participants who attended and are willing to listen and gain experience from Dr. Alasnag. I must also mention all the committee members of the Women Cardiology Working Group who have worked hard and sincerely to make this event happen. Without further ado, these were opening remarks. Please forgive us if there are any mistakes or shortcomings, and hopefully what is presented by Women Cardiology as a working group of the Indonesian Heart Association will always have a special place in your heart. Okay, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will now pass back to Dr. Indah and Dr. Dinda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Diana, for the wonderful opening remarks. Before we start and listen to what Dr. Alasnag gonna share for us today, let me just briefly introduce and read her CV. Okay. Okay, this is a brief curriculum vitae of Dr. Mirvat Alasnag. Why I say brief? Because it is very long and very amazing. So let me just briefly introduce about her. So she started her medical education in Dubai Medical College in 1991. Then she joined a residency in internal medicine in Saudi Arabia. And afterwards, she went all the way to the United States of America to get her clinical cardiology fellow and also her interventional cardiology fellow. And up to date, she is the cardiology attending and the director of the cardiac catheterization lab in Saudi Arabia. She is also the deputy head of adult cardiology. She is actively involved in various committee and organization worldwide, and she is also assigned as a reviewer for several high-impact journals, including Circulation, JAMA, and Euro Intervention. And currently, she is an associate editor for the Open Heart and Cardiovascular Revascularization Medicine Journal, Circulation Intervention Journal at AHA, and a contributing editor for Excel and PCR Online. She's also the social media editor for Euro Intervention, EAPCI, and the ACCIC Interventional Council. She is also trusted as the SKY Medical member board of trustees, a Sky International ambassador, and Skywin. Numerous publication that is very difficult to mention in one short introduction, and a lot of digital contribution. She's just recently assigned as the ACC VIC International Working Group Chair. This is the current position that she had just been granted. We're looking forward for her work in this position and how we can collaborate together between both of our countries and both of our association. Back to you, Dr. Mirvat Alasnag. We are kindly let you share your screen and start your presentation.
So thank you once again for this very kind invitation and this very kind introduction. I think it is very rare that we see women and we gather from all around the world. So it was absolutely heartwarming for me that when you reached out to me, Inda. And it was most intriguing to know that there is an Indonesian Women in Cardiology group. And absolutely, I'm most honored to be working with you in future collaborations. And perhaps this is just an introductory collaboration. So I was tasked to discuss the nuts and bolts of being a woman in innovation or a woman in interventional cardiology who wins and the challenges that follow. I thought very carefully about how to do it. And I think a lot of us think that, you know, it's either an escalator that takes you all the way up or an escalator that takes you all the way down. When in fact, the road going up and the road to success is not really a straight road. It isn't all the way just one straight road. There are lots of ups and downs and detours and stops along the way. And then you turn around and make a U-turn and start all over and so on. But ultimately, you get to where you need to be. And ultimately, hard work pays off. So this is what I would usually tell young women who are starting their career. There are lots of ups and downs. Be ready to embrace them all, the ups and the downs. But it's also important to recognize that we have to define success. How do we define success? How do we sustain success once we achieve it? And how do we achieve new successes? And how, you know, in other words, not staying stagnant. And then there are the downs. Once again, how do you define failure? How do we revisit the failures and move past them? And how do we avert failure if we can? So I'll start with the downs, simply because I want to end with the ups. How do you define failures? Well, one, it's an individualized decision and an individualized definition. What is a failure to me may not be a failure to somebody else. Changing definition as well. So what is a failure to me now at this phase in my career may not have been a failure years ago and may not be a failure a few years from now. So as an example, if you are an early career physician and you submitted a case report that was rejected, to you that may be a huge deal. This is all that you can produce early on in your career. And so when you are rejected, it feels like a blow. When you progress in your career and now you're a mid-career, a case report that's rejected is like, whatever. But when you have a randomized trial that you've been working hard on and you are trying to get it published and that's rejected, the amount of work, the amount of effort, and the career phase that you're in now is not as permissive for failures and mistakes. Another example as an interventional cardiologist is failing during a complex PCI. So when I was early on in my career or during training, if I couldn't succeed in opening a vessel, it didn't matter. I always had my backup, my attending, my consultant, and ultimately the procedure is logged under them. It's very different later on in your career where it counts. A failed PCI really counts towards who you are as an interventional cardiologist and the trust of your patients, of your administration, and your colleagues. So the definition we have to understand is very changeable along our course, and it's very different. Somebody who is not big on research wouldn't really care too much if they're rejected. Somebody who is a clinician, on the other hand, would care if their PCI goes sour. The next thing is, how do we revisit failure? Do we need to revisit failure, first of all? And my answer is yes, absolutely. If you weren't successful, go back. Ask yourself, what went wrong and how can I avoid it the next time around? An example would be involve a senior investigator in the design or the discussion of a manuscript that you're working on, doesn't hurt to do that. Go back to them and ask them, how could I have reworded this? How could I have changed the design of my study? And likewise, go back and review your procedural steps and work with a secondary operator and reconsider to avoid a complication down the line. And finally, how to avert failure? The number one answer is humility. Is just being modest enough to accept that, failures do happen. Medicine is a science. However, it is based on failures, successes, and a lot of unknowns. And you look at it, you look at the guidelines. The reason guidelines change is because the body of evidence changes with it. There was a point in time where beta blockers were contraindicated in heart failure. Perhaps the younger generation won't remember that. But people from my generation would remember that. When I was in medical school, they tell you what are the contraindications of beta blockers. Today, beta blockers is a cornerstone of heart failure management. And so we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of unknown in medicine. There's a lot to learn along the way. And so we have to continue to learn as we go along. Once we accept that, and we accept that we are not perfect as individuals, we end up growing. Otherwise, we become stagnant and we don't grow. So let's look at the ups. Again, the ups are a very individualized definition, and it is a very changing definition. So early on in your career, becoming a committee member is a big deal. Like, oh, wow, I signed up and they accepted me to become part of this, publication committee for the Society of Cardiovascular Angiography and Interventions. But then later in your career, becoming merely a committee member doesn't really cut it, isn't enough anymore. You're now more ambitious and you want to be the head of that committee. So now the success changes as well. Likewise, presenting your consultant's case in an international meeting is one thing when you're early career or a fellow in training. But later on, presenting your own unique technique, telling people about your steps for a procedure, for example, carries a lot more weight. So that's how the definition of success changes as well. How do we sustain success? One is build a team around you. Remember, we don't live in a vacuum, not as investigators and researchers, not as parents and family members, and certainly not as physicians and operators. We have a team, whether it's nurses and technicians, whether it's interventional cardiologists and what have you. The next thing is continue to network, just like when you have been networking on social media and otherwise, and connecting with other women and connecting with other experts in the field to expand your network and to expand the people you communicate with means you expand how much you learn and how much you can deliver. The other thing is ask for help. And so this is how you sustain success. It goes back to what I said during the failures. It's the same point. Always ask for help. Have the humility to ask for help. Next is pushing the envelope. Pushing the envelope means don't be stagnant. But remember, we're physicians, we're clinicians, and patient safety and patient care and science is at the heart of what we do. It has to be a calculated risk, as opposed to being reckless and doing something that you have never done before. So a calculated risk is saying, okay, I have not done this kind of a procedure before. What I'm going to do is get a proctor. What I'm going to do is watch videos as well, prepare, and do my first few cases chaperoned by a proctor until I'm ready to doing these procedures independently, but not stopping at only a few procedures that I can do in the cath lab. Recklessness, however, is seeing a procedure done on Twitter, having no chaperone, no prior experience, and saying, okay, I'm ready to jump in and do it. The point of recklessness is very important because it's part of the sustainability of your success. If you expand your horizons, push the envelope, but do it in a safe way, you sustain your success and you're not forgotten about. If you do it recklessly, you lose trust of your colleagues, your patients, and your community. The other thing is self-reflection. So again, very similar to failure, success requires to stop and reflect. Okay, my paper got accepted, but then go back and look at the comments that come up with the paper that was presented. Look at the comments that come up and ask yourself, could it have been written better? Could I have submitted it before the deadline so I'm not rushed, so it's not a rushed manuscript, and so on. Even though it was accepted, even though it was published, even though it was presented at an international meeting, Always stop and self-reflect. We don't have to self-reflect only when we fail. And finally, how do you achieve new successes? Well, you move the goalpost regularly. And it's sort of what I said about the goalpost, about the calculated risk. Remember, human beings in general are bodies of comfort. So if I'm comfortable doing the same thing, staying in the same routine, averting any medical legal implications, avoiding rocking the boat by, writing editorials that are perhaps provocative, it's time to stop and think, is this enough for me? Maybe not. Now let's push the post a little further. My goal is a little further than what it was a year ago. And it's a little further a year from now than what it is today, and so on. What are the challenges? Well, coming from conservative communities like ours, tradition and culture bear hard, but they bear hard in the medical community in general. And so people generally, and societies in general, are used to having men as heads of societies, are used to having men being the pioneers and the primary investigators of research projects, as being the mentors and being the people who help with industry training. But it's time to change it. And the change is a collective responsibility. It is not something that we do alone as women. It is what we need to do as women, along with our men colleagues. And it is something that does start with the women community, and it starts from the young women to the women with experience and the women who are sitting in panels and the women with leadership roles. And how does that work? When there's a young woman who's seeking mentorship, seek mentorship from a woman. Push her. You're pushing from below. But your role is equally important because it asserts this woman who is in a leadership position, and it shows that there are mentees who seek her. It shows that she can successfully transfer a woman in early career to mid-career and have her assume leadership roles. Likewise, a woman in a leadership role can pull a young person into leadership positions by offering them opportunities to speak, to serve as faculty, to present, to write papers, and so on. Another challenge is competition. But remember, competition, you can turn it into motivation. Competition doesn't have to be ugly, and it doesn't drag you down. What it does, it may burn a fire inside you to keep going, because we can get too comfortable and too complacent. So when you see the rest of your community moving, you feel like you need to move as well, and you need to develop yourself. But the number one challenge for many women is us, you. You are the number one challenge to yourself. And there are many colleagues who have spoken about that and have done webinars that were actually wonderful about imposter syndrome. And you need to believe in yourself. You need to recognize that you can do it, that other men and other women didn't get there because they're better than you or because they've miraculously been handed a golden spoon. They worked hard, and if you work hard and you have the motivation and drive, you can get there. But let's move on to more concrete things and not just motivational speech here. So not just believe in yourself, but what can you do if you do believe in yourself? I'm going to really quickly give you a rundown of a presentation that was done during the European Society of Cardiology last year in association with the American College of Cardiology, and I think it's very important. And it helps women transition into leadership roles and into roles from mere beginners. One is your mentor and your sponsor. It is important to have mentors and sponsors in your career, but remember, your mentor and sponsor can travel the journey with you and alongside you. And at some point in time, they can advocate for you because they're the ones that are going to be on committees, and they're going to be chairs and editors and so on. So you need to understand that the dynamics of the relationship with your mentor is going to evolve along the way with you. So early in your career, you may need their help to polish your CV and to write a personal statement. Later on, you're going to need them to recommend you for a committee. They're going to need to review a design of a study that you're preparing to lead, and so on. The other thing is social media, and you mentioned it in your introduction. Yes, social media. Learn who to follow. Remember, influencers does not mean retweeting journals and societies and institutions and that's it. Remember to engage intelligently. Let people know who you are, how you think critically and deeply, and that way they will want to reach out to you. And then depending on your interest and specialty, the societies and the journals all offer a lot of opportunities, particularly for early career and some of the mid-career. Reach out and look for them. And I'm going to quickly give you a rundown of them. So there's the ACC, ESC, Society of Cardiovascular Angiography, SCCT, the Women in as One, and so on. These are all websites, and I'm happy to send this to you, that you can go and access them. So you can get a career development grant. You can apply for ACC Leadership Academy. The Sky, there's an early leaders mentorship program. SCCT also has an early leadership program. Women as One has the Climb, and so on. So reach out to all of these. And then there are these societies, the Pink International Young, the Global Women in Cardiology, the British Young Women's Group and Training Group. They all offer webinars and opportunities to present, and they all offer opportunities to write and collaborate and so on. Seek them and don't wait for them to seek you. There are a lot of women and they may not know who you are, but let them be your step upwards. Journals and conferences are a golden opportunity to submit your work, your cases, your research, your posters. Do it. And it is the most commonly forgotten channel where experts review your professional work. I think a lot of us gravitate towards social media. But remember, the time that somebody of caliber has to review and actually pay attention to what you're saying is when it is part of a journal or a conference submission. So when I actually have to sit down and do a proper critical appraisal and make selection of abstracts, it's usually when I'm invited to be an abstract grader for one of the major conferences. And what will catch my eye is a presentation or an abstract or a poster by an early career. And that's when you're going to want to reach out to them. So don't forget, this is when you have the access to the most experienced, the most expert, and frankly, the ones with a lot of the power and authority to pull you up and invite you for something else. So put the effort to present yourself in these appropriate and more formal channels and not just social media. Finally, look within your institution for opportunities. So your institution may have vacancies, job vacancies, even if they're temporary. So you may need to be an acting leadership role or a deputy leadership role or a head of a section that's been open, even temporarily. But at least it gives you an opportunity to show them how you work, how organized you are, how you meet deadlines, the quality of your work, the innovation of your ideas, and so on. So reach out to all of these. And more to it is charity work. So looking within your community, what kind of charity work will serve your community, build your experience, and then you can report the results as well. And it can be something publishable that can be acknowledged by the international community. Education and training of technicians, for example, in nursing, that there's a paucity of operators and physicians who actually look into that and contribute in this arena. And so if you make it one of your niche, it becomes part of a quality program that is now endorsed by so many, including the American College of Cardiology. And I strongly recommend that you look into it. Finally, the pull and push, which is what I was telling you, and I always like to end with a positive note. Pay it forward. You know, if you push a woman or you pull a woman, somehow what goes around comes around, and they recognize that it will happen inadvertently, even when you don't know it. Someone will recognize your hard work and it will pay off, and you will be offered one opportunity after the other. And honestly, that is what happened with me. I started tagging women, teaching them how to do critical appraisal, for example, with PCR online journal clubs. And somehow that paid off. Somehow they became grateful. Somehow they encouraged me to join them in their projects. And somehow I started assuming the role of leadership and mentorship and so on. And so I'll end with this. Remember that, you know, winning and being part of an interventional community or otherwise, even if you choose something outside of interventional community, the way up, like the way down, it isn't a straight way up. It isn't a simple escalator or an elevator up or down. You may be going on many detours, but be brave enough not to stop, to challenge yourself and move on. I think what I'll do is stop here and perhaps ask the panel to join me for discussion.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Alasnag. That is a very great presentation and very inspiring. We would like to invite all the committee to turn on their camera to join us in the discussion right now. Okay, Dr. Alasnag, first of all, I would like to introduce you. Among the attendees today, we have actually also the first female interventional cardiologist in Indonesia and also in Singapore. We have Dr. Antonia Lukito from Indonesia and Dr. Lim Ing Han from Singapore. Good afternoon, Dr. Antonia and Dr. Ing Han. And we also have Dr. Yusta, Dr. Lely, Dr. Mia, Dr. Diana, and Dr. Sasmaya. And if anybody from the audience would like to ask their question, please direct them on the Q&A box. Or if you would like to ask the question to Dr. Alasnag or to the panelists directly, please raise your hand and we'll gladly promote you to be the panelist.
Okay, Dr. Indah, can I ask the first question?
Of course, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Alasnag. I would like to ask a question that everybody else here wondered. We understand that you were the first interventionist in the Gulf region. What were the reasons that at that time, no other female cardiologists in your country took the step to become interventional cardiologists?
You know, at first I thought the reason why in the Middle East in general, you know, not limited to Saudi Arabia, but in the region, in the Gulf region, the number of women who ventured into interventional cardiology was because of a very conservative society. But then when I started attending a lot of international meetings, I realized that globally, all around the world, the number of women interventional cardiologists is actually very low, wherever you go, even when you go to North America and Europe and so on. And I think part of the reason is, one was radiation. People were concerned about radiation, and there wasn't enough education about the risks of radiation and the risks of spontaneous congenital anomalies in the child and so on, fetus and so on. So part of it was the community didn't raise adequate awareness. And the other part of it was the community in general was not very welcoming. I don't think they made it very flexible work hours and so on, posing a lot of challenges for women when they are pregnant, when they are lactating and so on. But even beyond the family, the community did not make it easy. And I can tell you for sure, speaking to a lot of colleagues who were, as I said, in North America and Europe and South America and so on, it was very cliquey. So men would go golfing together, and when they come out of their golfing you know, day, you would suddenly find a collaboration that they had talked about while they were golfing, and they are now, you know, coming up with a panel and speakers and so on, or a research project. And somehow the women were excluded, and it became a pattern where women were not part of this informal outings where a lot was decided. And it became part of conferences where women would start to attend networking and where a lot of these were also born. And that's when change started to happen. For me, when I went back, when I was training, I was initially thinking of imaging. But I went into the cath lab, enjoyed the cath lab very much, and decided this is what I want to do. At that time, I was so young and so naive that I didn't even realize there weren't enough women in this area, or that there were no women in my part of the world. I had seen women surgeons, I had seen women gastroenterologists, and so I assumed there were women interventional cardiologists. I never realized there weren't any. And so my purpose wasn't to be the first woman. My purpose was I genuinely enjoyed the cath lab and then went back. And when I went back, I realized I was the only woman. And I think this is where mentorship really plays a role. When I first realized I was the only woman, I was like, oh, wow, I'm the only woman. For the first 3 years, my mentor told me it's not about being the first, it's about being the best. And that really stuck in my head. I'm not competing with other women. I'm competing with men who have plenty of opportunities in this field. And so I really, really have to stand out. I have to put 10 times the effort. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth of it. Women have to put 10 times the effort to stand out because otherwise they get very diluted.
Oh, wow. Okay. From the other panelists, Dr. Antonia, Dr. Inghan, do you have any question for Dr. Alasna?
Hi, Dorinda.
Hi, Dr. Antonia.
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Very clearly.
Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity. Uh, Dear Dr. Mirvat, it's been a wonderful and eyes-opening sharing session. And today I find there are some interesting facts about female interventionists. For example, in our country, Indonesia, the female cardio, as Dr. Diana mentioned before, is about 1/3 of all cardiologists. 1/3 now. And about the female interventionist is about 40 something maybe. Yeah? And also about 1/3 of all interventionists in Indonesia. But in contrary, in Singapore, maybe Dr. Inhan later will speak out about this too. We find only one or maybe two, maybe two female interventionists. And while in Philippines, the female tend to prefer the electrophysiologist compared to the intervention. And while in Malaysia is about similar number with us. And also I noticed in India and Sri Lanka, there is a plenty of female intervention. So how about your experience in UAE and the neighborhood countries about the numbers?
Well, thank you. It's an absolute honor to meet you today, being the first woman in Indonesia. I think the numbers in Indonesia are very impressive, absolutely impressive. And in the Middle East, the numbers right now, we have about 7, I believe, interventional cardiologists that are women, compared to over 300, 400 men. Egypt has a population of 90 million, and I can't tell you how many interventional cardiologists there. The women interventional cardiologists are less than 10. So the discrepancy is quite huge. And I would say likewise in South America, likewise in America and Northern Europe. I think the total number quoted in the United States now is women are almost 9% of the total cardiologists. We don't have accurate numbers for other parts of the world. I think it is impressive. And I think as one joins and then the second joins and so on, then the numbers suddenly start to grow. And I think the community becomes more accepting. Patients start to realize that a woman, operating on the heart is exactly the same as a man operating on the heart, and particularly as the legacy goes on. So as your legacy goes on in Indonesia, Dr. Antonia, I'm sure you've made it easier for the generations after you. You see, the women pay the price, unfortunately. So if one woman is successful, she opens the door for women after her. Sadly, if one woman is not successful, and it's her right to fail, because men fail too, she closes the door on women after her. And so that creates a responsibility on women, unfortunately, that men don't have to carry.
Okay, I like to speak.
Hi, Inghan.
Hi,
Hi, Dr.
Antonio.
Inghan.
Hi, Inda. Hi, Diana. And hello, Mirvat. How are you?
Hello.
I enjoyed the
Glad
talk.
to see you, although virtually.
Yes, that's right. So, there are a lot of things that you said that I identify with. I think Antonio mentioned that there are some countries with a lot of female interventional cardiologists. Indonesia is one of them, and China is the other one. They have more than half of the interventional cardiologists who are women. Okay, so I would say in Singapore and perhaps in Middle East, the situation is the same, is similar. Firstly, when I first joined cardiology, I wasn't aware that there was no other female interventionalist. And when I chose to do intervention, it was not because there was, I didn't even consider whether there was females or no females. It was, I wasn't made to feel different, okay, when I first joined. However, it became clearer after I finished training that that no other women felt the need to join interventional cardiologists in Singapore. And I feel that the reason could be that they were rather than being encouraged to do what they potentially could do well, they were not given the appropriate encouragement. It's more like an old boys club. The is like an old boys club where they can't get in. So it's like if you're in a big hospital with all the male cardiologists, sometimes it's not about just going for after work drinks or that includes even meeting for lunch. A lot of times you're not part of it, and there are some activities that they don't invite you for, and females don't play like golf. We don't want to spend so much time doing all that, and because you do not spend the time networking outside of work, a lot of times you don't feel like you can you're on the same level in terms of discussion, like you're left out of committees, like what Mirvat has said, you know. So there is a problem there. I feel that for me, I was trained and became interventional cardiologist in 2005. Now we have two other younger female interventionists, and I feel that now we're getting more females who do not feel that there's this big hurdle they need to go against, and so there will be more and more girls. So it just takes time. So we are very far behind, actually, behind Indonesia. We're just very far behind in terms of the young female trainees feeling more welcome. But the very fact that you have so many female interventionists, it just shows that this is not a specific, it's not a skill set as specific to males, and females can do it just as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Inhan.
Yes.
Yeah. I see Dr. Sorry, Dorinda. I see Dr. Aisyah also here. How are you, Dr. Aisyah Kader? You connecting to the audio now?
Meantime, there's a hand raised. I think.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Zainab, you can open your video and ask your question, and then Dr. Ati, who previously raised her hand, can also ask the question afterwards. Dr. Zainab, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Zainab from Iraq.
Hello, Dr. Zainab.
Is the voice clear?
Yes, we can hear
sorry,
you.
I'm not able to open the video. I was not prepared. I was not thinking that we can contribute by talking or asking in the webinar. Actually, first of all, I would like to thank you all for coordination of this great session, and thank you very much, Dr. Mirvat, for your motivational presentation. This was great, and being almost the only female interventional cardiologist in Iraq, actually, really, I was touched by the phrase that you said, that it's not about being the first, but being the best. It's actually great. My question is that regarding the mentorship, maybe for a cardiologist who has training outside their country, especially if they are actually restrained by their cultures and customs, especially in the Middle Eastern countries. Maybe going out and traveling and then coming back to our countries may facilitate mentorship and networking, especially the mentorship from other countries. But what about the chances or the opportunities that can be made by different societies for networking and maybe getting or coordinating opportunities for mentorship between mentees that are from maybe developing countries and they are seeking mentors from other countries or from other developing countries. I mean, there is a chance that this can be coordinated maybe by the societies.
So I listed several during my presentation, depending on your area of interest and your area of expertise, that you can seek out and you can get mentorship with them. And you know, these are done routinely. So Women as One, for example, has the climb, and it has opportunities for mentorship and so on. The Society of Cardiovascular Angiography and Interventions has done the same thing, and we're doing it with the international committee. So there are some collaborations, and we try to connect people according to their interests. We just finished a batch that included women, of course, not the whole thing, but it did include women who are both mentees and mentors. And we try to do that. It is important to see women in the role of a mentor as well, and not just as a mentee. So societies have them, and you just need to reach out to these societies. The ACC Women in Cardiology has always had them. When you register for their meeting, they always have these brown bag events, and they have these luncheons and breakfast events and so on, that are actually easier now during the virtual sessions, during the digital world, because they can accommodate larger numbers than they used to. They used to, you know, close off the registration and so on, but now it's open. So I definitely encourage you to do that. But I think it is important that we also recognize that locally, we now have the expertise, and we now have the women who are capable of being mentors. So I'm surprised to hear some of these numbers today, like Indonesia, 1/3 are women, China, 50% are women. So we have these in the region, and these are women that you can reach out to in your local area and have them be your mentors, and see if they can, you know, if it's permissive to go and spend time with them in the cath lab and learn specific procedures, or in their imaging lab and learn specific acquisition protocols and so on. So you need to fine tune what it is that you want and reach out. You can do it through societies, absolutely, it's available. And as I mentioned, I'm going to try to send it to Inda so that it's available to women, you know, who are interested in CT, Sky, Women as One, etc. And I also mentioned things such as Global Women in Cardiology and so on. And they have done a fabulous job of giving opportunities to women to present cases and case competitions that eventually gets published and so on. So absolutely, please do reach out. And if you don't know and you're seeking something very specific, reach and ask. You know, I want to learn a little bit more about CTOs. What can I do?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Wanda.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Next, I would like to invite Dr. Ati Munawar. Dr. Ati. Okay, maybe can read the question from the Q&A first. This one is from Dr. Sarah Haidar. As women, we have more demand, especially at home. How should we deal with the self-doubt inside of our head that we are not good enough as a doctor, as a wife, or as a mother?
That's a very, very important question. And don't let imposter syndrome hit you. And don't try to juggle too many things at one time. Nothing in life, and this is what I try to emphasize in my lecture, is nothing in life, we don't live in a vacuum. Make sure you have a team around you. Make sure you have a village around you. So whether that is at work, in the cath lab, whether it is at home, and so on. So there's no harm in having your family, your sister, your mother, your father, your husband, neighbors, etc., help you. And that's what I had. I had kids that had school runs, and my parents were helping me with the school runs. I divided the school runs between me and my sister. So I would pick up her kids and my kids the same time that she would, and then another day she would pick up my kids and drop off her kids and my kids at the same time, and so on. And likewise at work. So you created a family around you at work as well. And I'll give you a very good example. What goes around comes around. Pay it forward and it will come back to you. One of my colleagues, very senior colleague, actually, it was his first grandchild ever. And he really needed to go and see his first grandchild, and you can tell how happy he was. So I'm like, please go, I'll cover you, don't worry. He was on call. I took it on me to cover him while he went. I was just young and I had no problem taking extra calls and picking up extra calls here and there, but it paid off. The next time around, I needed time off. You reach a point when you create a team around you and a family, and it becomes very friendly, where you don't ask, they offer you, like, oh no, the bank just sent me a message, I need to run to the bank, how am I going to do this? This old guy comes in and he's like, you know what, just go. You need to go for a few hours, just go, I'll cover you. So that is what I would encourage. And I don't think you should beat yourself up, and I don't think you should hold yourself to the gun if you forget one appointment at school or something like that. It will happen, and it happens even to mothers who are not working, by the way. It's just working mothers and career women tend to be a little harder on themselves. They have a higher benchmark for whatever reason. But don't sweat the little things. Your kids are much more resilient than you think, and create a team and a family and a village around you to help you and carry you. That would be my number one advice.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Ati, are you still here? I think she wanted to ask a question. Or we have also here with us Dr. Siska Dani. She's the chairwoman for Perki Indonesian Heart Association Jakarta chapter. She's one of the big shot in Indonesia. So Dr. Siska, how are you?
Hi, Inda. Hello, everybody. Thank you. That was a great session. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for the initiative, and thank you, Dr. Alsanya, for giving us such inspiring lecture.
Dr. Siska, do you have any question for Dr. Alasnag?
I'm sorry, my reception is not very good here. I'm in the middle of a meeting, actually, but I'm still monitoring the IWOC activities and feel very proud and inspired already.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Siska. Dr. Alasnag, actually, I wanted to ask you a question. Can you tell us a little bit, how would a normal day for Dr. Alasnag looks like, being a wife, a mother, an interventional cardiologist, a researcher, a cath lab director, and also having time to serve as peer reviewer, editorial board, and board members for various organizations? I mean, how do you find the time and energy to do all that? Any tips and tricks for us young women in cardiology? We would like to hear that tips and trick from you.
So, organization, and you just have to be very organized with your time. What I've learned the hard way, actually, is multitasking doesn't work. And multitasking is actually counterintuitive and is not time efficient. So what I do is I actually block time. So family time is family time. I end up, if I'm trying to spend time with my kids, and at the same time I'm sitting there working on a paper, I end up taking much longer with the paper because I'm not focused. But if you dedicate time, and so, okay, I wake up early when the kids are still asleep and so on, particularly the weekends, I'm just an early riser. So I use that 1 to 2 hours to finish off emails, to finish off work, review papers, etc. That is the time that I'm actually most productive, and there's no interruption. Likewise, when I'm patient care. So when I'm attending to my patients, I'm 100% focused on my patients. I try not to be distracted. Having said that, it's not as easy. And I'm sure all of you understand that since you're in the medical profession. There are times where you are, having a pillow fight with your kids on the bed, and everybody's just giggling and laughing, and it's so heartwarming that they're giggling and laughing. But at the same time, you're really focused on that very sick hypotensive patient that you left at work. I think, again, I'll go back to making sure you have support system at home, so that when you're at work with your patients, it takes 100% focus to be operating on patients and so on. So to just make sure you're not distracted by what's happening at home and you know your kids are safe, their dad is with them or your mom or what have you. And likewise, try as best as you can not to focus on work when you're with your family. So I actually discourage multitasking. I encourage a lot of organization. I encourage taking time off, even very brief time off to re-energize and then get back into it, because it can be draining and you can have a lot of burnout if you choose to do it that way. So you really need to I take short breaks. I can't afford to take long breaks being a mom. But that's what works for me. It may work differently for other people, but honestly, this is what's worked for me.
Okay. Actually, Dr. Ati Munawar has asked the question on the chat box. If you let me read it to you. She asked, is the networking matters a lot in helping you being the first female interventionist at that time?
So I don't think networking got me into interventional cardiology. As I said, I went to train in the US under the assumption that I'm going to do imaging, because there was a job demand for imaging, and there still is. There's a huge demand worldwide for proper imagers. And so I started to focus on imaging, and a lot of my research and so on early in my career, in my fellowship, was imaging. But once my turn to do my cath lab rotation came and I went into the cath lab, I immediately fell in love with the cath lab and wanted to pursue a career in interventional cardiology. And at that time, I think it was a blessing that I was so naive to what job opportunities there were or what competition there was or whether there were women or not. And I just went ahead and finished my interventional training and went back. It was only afterwards that I realized that, I am the only woman, and how am I going to survive this, and so on. But I don't think the networking helped me get into interventional cardiology. But as I said, if you want to succeed and you want to move on in life and you don't want to be just another interventional cardiologist, you do have to network. And networking is through social media. It is through webinars like this. It is through applying to Global Women in Cardiology and their the competitions that they hold with case presentations and so on. So I strongly encourage that kind of networking.
Okay, and so there's a follow-up question from Aisha from Bangladesh. She asks, how do you pick and choose between projects when you're busy and reconcile a sense of regret or FOMO when you do say no to some of them?
Yeah, I think as women in particular, when you're a foreign woman and you're working with societies, and I'm being very honest here, when you're working with societies in Europe and North America and so on, there's always that fear that if I say no because I want work-life balance, is another opportunity going to come or not? I think if you've established yourself and proven yourself, opportunities will come. So rest assured that if you say no once, that's not going to block people from reaching out to you again. But yes, earlier in my career, I was very hesitant to say no. And I would say yes to almost everything until you almost drive yourself mad. But once you've established yourself, people know your name. And Dr. Aisha Saida is somebody who is well established now. People know her name. It is a trademark now. I would say now she's in a position where she can say yes and no. Now she can pick and choose, and more opportunities will come. You're not going to be at a loss of opportunities. But earlier in your career, think twice before saying no is my honest advice. But as you establish yourself, don't worry. Even if you say no to one, something else will come along. You've been around enough. People trust your judgment, trust your work ethic, your ability to reach deadlines and so on, and they will reach out to you, especially if you're a team player. And ask what it will add to you. That's how I say yes and no. In the beginning, it was I wanted to say yes because I wanted to learn as much as I could from every opportunity that came my way. Then you reach a phase where you have to ask yourself, how does this add to me, and not just how do I add to them? So if it adds something to you, jump on it and say yes. If it's not, and it's a repetition of something you've done, step back.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Alasnag. Actually, we have one of our committee member here, Dr. Lely. She wants to ask a question. I would like to invite her to open her video and just ask the question herself.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. Hi, Dr. Alasnag. Very happy to see you here. So, I'm a UB or young interventionist in Surabaya, Indonesia. So, I would like to ask, if you deal with like tough case at work and also worst patient condition, what do you usually do to overcome this kind of situation when you came home? And yeah, you should be happy at home and not thinking about the office stuff. So what do you usually do to overcome this kind of situation? Thank you.
Wow, this is a fantastic question, and I'm glad you actually asked it. I do think revisiting our mistakes is key to our personal growth, and it's key so that there's some closure and we can move on, because big mistakes or a complication with a patient or patient mortality can shake us and shake our confidence in ourselves. So it is important to go back to it. However, what you don't want to do is, when you're still in the heat of the moment, to go back and grill yourself. It's nice to step away from it for a little bit. Step away from the experience, do something, spend time with family, go have a nice meal, watch a comedy movie and what have you. In a day or so, then go back and go over the steps. What could I have done differently? Was this case supposed to come to the cath lab anyway, or was it futile? Should I have asked somebody else? And then question your colleagues, your nurses, and so on, and go over these steps with them. I think it is important because it will, as I said, it will give you closure, but it's also going to give you room to grow, because ultimately that's what you want to be. You want to be, and one thing to bear in mind, again, don't beat yourselves up. I have noticed that women operators somehow feel like they're under the microscope, which unfortunately they are. And so they set the bar very high for themselves. So they don't want complications at all. But bear in mind, if you are an operator, complications will happen. People who don't do procedures don't have complications. If you do procedures, you will have a complication. That doesn't mean you brush it off and say it's normal, everybody has complications. As I said, visit it so that you can grow. But step back from it a little bit, and then I would say revisit it, and then address how you could have done it differently.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Putri Sarah. She raised her hand. Dr. Putri Sarah, can you ask directly? Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you, Dr. Alasnag. It was very inspiring. I learned a lot from your presentation today, and I would like to know. Of course, you did mention before that what you call it, that working is really important. And how about proctorship? Can you do that proctorship in our country one day? I really like to want to know if there's an opportunity that I could or we could all could attend that kind of webinars also. If it's possible, that is it the proctorship that can you come to the country, or do we have to go to your centers to get that kind of experience?
I would be most honored to visit you in your centers and help as best as I can. I rarely say no still, in spite of Aisha's question. I rarely say no to things such as this. And I'm more than happy to come proctor and help wherever and whenever I can. I think perhaps the COVID pandemic shook things a little bit, but virtually, digitally, I'm happy to help however I can. And then hopefully when things open up a little bit better, I'm more than happy to visit Indonesia. I was there for my honeymoon, and this was one of the best places I have ever visited, to be honest, and would certainly like to visit it again. But I won't tell you when I came, so I won't tell you when that was.
Yeah, you have to go to
Dr. Alasnag, actually, I want to read. There's one question from Dr. Kasiman from the UK. She asked a question regarding personality traits. She often receives comments from people saying that I'm kind and easygoing with colleagues, whereas other cardiologists are often very assertive to the patient. point of sometimes blocking people off. I'm worried my personality might interfere with my ability to progress through training and obtain interesting opportunities. Do you have any tips on how to overcome this? Thank you.
You know, the world of medicine and science has all sorts of people. There are the shy people, there are the outgoing people. There's no one perfect trait. And again, I would say women are placed under the microscope unfairly and unjustly. And I have seen it. When I try to be accommodating and sensitive and help out women, you're perceived as weak. When you try to be assertive and firm and you have, you hold people accountable, particularly when you're in a leadership position, you're deemed a witch and difficult and so on. These are standards that men are often not held to. So I can call out someone and be labeled as a witch. My boss can call out that same person and he's just the boss. That's okay. So I wouldn't beat myself up too much about myself. Do what you think is right. And I think one thing to understand is that situations are different. There are situations that call for you to be sympathetic and to give people a second chance. There are situations where you have to be assertive and where you have to hold your team or whomever accountable. Finding that fine balance is not going to be easy, but at the end of the day, do what you think is right for your conscience, because you will never please anybody. As long as you're doing what's right for your patient or for your job and so on, and for you personally, then by all means do that.
Thank you very much. Such a great answer.
I see there is a one, Dr. Zainab is raising her hand. Can we listen to her for 1 second before?
Hi, thank you very much for giving me also, again, time for asking. Dr. Mirvat, actually, I want to ask, in a state of early career research, and especially in low resources setting, what's your advice for a researcher? You know that sometimes, especially in countries like mine, maybe the interventional cardiologists, they see that it's not right that you focus on research, and a real, as they describe, a real interventional cardiologist mostly should focus on their skills, hand skills, and so on. So in absence of collaborators from others, and in absence of resources and funding, still you want to do certain research, you want to do certain work that is really add to the literature. What's your advice in such condition when we feel that we are stuck? We want to do something, we have ideas, but we can't get them into reality. What's your advice in such situation?
So again, Zainab, that is a wonderful question. And I think a lot of the times when we're in our early career, we take on more than we can chew. We bite more than what we can chew. And we want to be operators, and we want to build our skill, and we want to be researchers, and we want to be, I guess, social media influencers and so on. Mind you, it's okay to do these. You don't have to do them simultaneously. And I remember a fantastic talk by Dr. Minna Walsh, who was the immediate past president, or the past president of the ACC, American College of Cardiology. And she said, you can do all of these things, but they don't, including building a family, including becoming a renowned researcher and so on. But you don't have to do them all at one time. You can do it gradually. So you need to build your, for example, referral base. So for me, what worked is in my early career, I wanted to build a family and build my name and my referral base. And so that was my focus. I later moved on to social media and research. And even now that I'm doing research, a lot of my focus is critical appraisal, because research is an engine all of itself. And unless you have the mechanism, and it's an industry all by itself. So unless you have the mechanism, the engine for it, you have to be careful. You don't want to do a mediocre job. But to be more specific about answering your question about research, what I strongly recommend is doing research relevant to your area. If you do research relevant to your area, you're not competing with other researchers in other areas. And it is also a focus of interest. So when you're looking at, for example, women in the Middle East specifically, and you're looking at, their door-to-balloon times, or you're looking at their response to antiplatelets and so on. If you do that, or their response to shock treatments and the shock cascades and so on. So whatever you choose, if you do it relevant to your region, it will become attractive internationally, because now you're giving them regional data, and it will definitely boost who you are regionally, because nobody else has that kind of data. So that's what I would recommend is, number one, start with regional data that hasn't been explored, then reaching out and doing wider, more collaborative efforts. So, I was with the Pakistani women's group, and they were talking about risk factors and how fasting in Ramadan affects them. And there's a lot of small data here and there. And one of the brainstorming sessions that came up was like, well, there are a lot of women in Pakistan, in Indonesia, in the Middle East who fast. Why don't we pull our data together and then publish something on that? So this is what I would say is don't distract yourself. Be very focused on what you do. Take on one thing at a time. Start regional data, because that way you're not competing with other people, and it improves your chances of acceptance, of having your work accepted. And then reaching out to people who are published, very good investigators, and pick their brains on your design, on your conclusions, on your discussion, and do it unofficially. You can credit them, you can acknowledge them in your paper at the end. They don't actually have to be co-authors. And the most credible and ethical of them will not expect to be co-authors on a regional paper. However, if you acknowledge them, you build that trust between you and them and other people, and they will appreciate it. That would be my advice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zainab.
Thank you very much. Now I will invite Dr. Sasmaya.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dita. Thank you so much, Dr. Alasnag. Very inspiring lecture. Thank you so much. I dearly appreciate it. And then it's a pleasure to meet you, actually, although it's not in person. Hopefully I will meet you in person one day after these COVID situations. Actually, I'm not an interventionist. I'm a heart failurist. But it's a very pleasure to hear your lecture. I'm just wondering, how about the situations of heart failure in your country? Because actually in Indonesia, it's quite underdeveloped until now, the heart failure service in Indonesia. So I'm just wondering about the heart failure service situations in your country. And then I'm also curious about how often do you work together with the heart failurists in your country? And what is the most interesting case that you ever work together with the heart failure in your country? Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I absolutely hope to meet each and every one of you one day in person soon. Absolutely, heart failure, the incidence of heart failure is increasing worldwide, Middle East likewise. And I think it is key that we start including our heart failure specialists in decision-making process. So it isn't just about changing the valve. It isn't just about revascularizing the coronary arteries. In addition to that, it is optimizing the filling pressures and optimizing the risk factors and determining whether the patient needs an ICD or not, and so on. And the sooner we get the heart failure specialists on board, the better the outcomes, I believe. And there's some data on that as well. The only problem is that although the incidence of heart failure is increasing worldwide, the number of specialists and experts in advanced heart failure are not keeping pace. And I think the problem is interventional cardiology, and I'm not talking about men, women anymore. I'm talking in general. In general, the cath lab is very glamorous, and you will find a lot of people automatically gravitate to the cath lab. And a lot of the time, the cath lab are the heroes and are the ones that are, posted everywhere. But the people who do a lot of the hard work are actually the clinical cardiologists, the heart failure specialists, and so on. And I think very early on during training, during residency and medical school and so on, we don't emphasize these specialties enough. We really don't. We don't emphasize that there's a great job opportunity for them. There is a great demand for them, and we don't incentivize enough for them. There are a lot of places, again, if I say North America and so on, the reimbursement and the RVUs for an interventional cardiologist are obviously far more than for a heart failure specialist who sits in clinic. Things like that need to change. You need to incentivize people a lot more because demand is going up, absolutely, and will continue to go up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your answer. How many? I'm just wondering, how many heart failures in your country actually for now?
So I don't know the exact number, but they do have
Roughly?
a heart failure working group. They do have transplant specialists.
Okay.
So you know, I would say probably men and women, maybe 50 plus.
Oh, okay. Is there a lot of women heart failures there?
I would say yes, and I would say
Okay.
the large majority of the heart failure specialists are women and not men, but I could be wrong. Likewise, echo and imaging, it's probably less, but a lot of them are women.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for such an interesting discussion and engaging dialogue. Now, I would like to ask the final question before we close this meeting to Dr. Alasnag. What is your message to all women cardiologists in all over the world, especially in Indonesia?
Well, I think continue to do what you're doing. I mean, it is absolutely inspiring what women are capable of doing and what they are doing. And I think something very important that women have done is brought humanity back into medicine. I think bringing the warm touch, opening the channels of communication with our patients, with our colleagues, and so on, discussing inequality, discussing diversity, all of this came up inspired by women. So I would say continue to inspire. You inspire younger generations and older generations, women and men alike, and people from your region and outside your region. And I was most inspired by this invitation. It really knocked a little bit of sense into me. I'm the ACC International chair right now, and it tells me that, you know, I need to look outside my own circle. There are circles that are far-reaching, and there's far more that can be done, and I'm just absolutely honored and very grateful for this invitation.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Dr. Indah, shall we start the photo session?
Okay, we end our discussion session already, and now we would like to invite all panelists and all attendees to please turn on your camera, and let's take a beautiful picture together. And that is one thing that makes us different from the all boys club.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Okay, let me count. 3, 2, 1, smile to the camera. Okay, once more. 3, 2, 1, smile. And the last one, because there are 3 pages. Smile. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so that concludes today's event. Thank you very much, Dr. Alasnag, for accepting our invitation, and we are looking forward for your work as the ACC VIC International Chair, and we're looking forward to collaborate with you in future projects and events. Thank you so much for attending today's session, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Alasnag.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alasnag.
For the inspiring
Thank you all very much.